Good evening,
Good evening.
and welcome to this regular meeting of the Helotes City Council. It's September 27th, 2018, and we're underway at 7 p.m. Starting our agenda tonight, we have our invocation, and tonight Councilmember Meadows will be handling that part of the agenda, and then we will have the pledges to the American and Texas flags. So if you would please stand for the invocation and pledges.
Heavenly Father, thanks for our continued blessings that you bestow on all of us on a daily basis. We ask for your continued blessings on our city, our state, and our nation moving forward. Would you please give us guidance as we prepare for our finalization of our annual budget and on our daily activities that staff has to do to make Helotes the special place that it is. We ask that your protection for city employees and staff, for local, state, and national elected officials, and for our armed forces that are serving in the U.S. and around the world. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor
The Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, next up we have some recognition in the form of a proclamation. And this is for National Fire Prevention Week this year. So, Chief, if you'll join me up here, we'll get you your proclamation. And for those of you that have never met our fire chief, this is Scott Moreland. He came to us in January, the end of January this year. He spent 32 years, finished up as a captain at the Corpus Christi Fire Department. I tell you, he's been a great asset to us here, and gave him a task of putting together a proposal for a new fire engine and a new ambulance, and he did that and made it very plain that the need was there, and the fire truck and the ambulance have been ordered, and we should have it right after the first of the year, maybe as late as February, but hopefully sooner. He keeps sending me pictures of it on the assembly line. It doesn't look like a fire truck yet, but it's getting there, so I feel like he's like an expectant father. He's giving us the baby pictures of this fire truck as it's being produced. But anyway, we're so glad to have him, and he's made some great changes over in the fire station, and I think the personnel over there appreciate him being there. So this is for all of you. This is Office of the Mayor, Helotes, Texas, proclamation, National Fire Prevention Week 2018. Look, listen, learn, be aware. Fire can happen anywhere. It says, whereas the City of Helotes Fire Department firefighters and paramedics are committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting in the City of Helotes, and whereas fire is a serious public safety concern, both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at the greatest risk, and whereas the 2018 Fire Prevention Week theme is look, listen, learn, be aware, fire can happen anywhere, effectively serves to remind us that we need to take personal steps to increase our safety from fire. And whereas Fire Prevention Week also serves to remind us that half of the home fire deaths result from fires reported between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. when most people are asleep, and almost 60% of reported home fires resulted from fires in homes with no smoke alarms or with non-working smoke alarms. Now therefore I, Thomas A. Schoolcraft, on behalf of the members of City Council and by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Helotes, Texas, do hereby proclaim October 7th through 13th, 2018 as National Fire Prevention Week, and urge all people in the city of Helotes to be aware of their surroundings. Look for available ways out in the event of a fire or other emergency. Respond when the smoke alarm sounds by exiting the building immediately, and to support the City of Helotes Fire Department and emergency services during Fire Prevention Week. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused this seal to be affixed. Congratulations. Marcia will take, no telling how many pictures. Got it? Okay. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Want to say anything?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Okay, next up is our open session, commonly referred to as citizens to be heard. We do have one individual sign up to speak tonight, Andrew Height. So, Andrew, you have, please come up and state your name, address, and once you state your address, you'll have 3 minutes for your talk.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, City Administrator, City Secretary. My name's Andrew Height. I live at 10410 Lazy F Trail. I'm here this evening, I came tonight to address a concern I have with the FM 1560 and SH 16 project. It's my understanding that back on August 14, 2014, there was a meeting here with TxDOT and the City Council. My research indicates that the purpose of this project was for operational functioning, to improve the operational functional safety of this intersection. I assume the safety improvement also, it addressed the safety of automobile traffic, but I'm here tonight, hopefully, to ask that it also, I assume, was addressing the pedestrians. I have seen, it has been my pleasure since living here in Helotes for the last 5 years. It's only been a short time, but I've really enjoyed and been my pleasure to be here. But I have seen many near misses, as well as the fear in people crossing the road at Leslie Road, as well as Circle A coming across Bandera Road, where traffic is going sometimes in excess of the speed limit. And coming to our wonderful events here near City Hall. They'll come over, even if they're just conducting business at City Hall or many civic events. The fantastic movie nights that have been started here, and as well as the parades that we have and everything. I know that our wonderful police department is out there directing the traffic at some of these events, but not all of them. And I've really seen that people are very fearful when they come across this road. And so many more lanes that we've added now, I think we've made it even a little more dangerous. I leave you here this evening with 2 questions I hope that we can get some answers to. Will pedestrian crosswalks be added at Circle A and Bandera Road and at Leslie Road and Bandera intersections? My second question, can this happen before it's mandated by a catastrophe? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. And just so you'll know, there is a controlled crosswalk at Leslie and Bandera on one side.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the one going here, I'm just worried about people coming from like the post office trying to get over to.
Yeah, there's a crosswalk there too.
Okay.
That has the signals.
Is it? Very
Okay.
good.
Thank you. Okay, next up is our consent agenda. Tonight it's items 4 through 7. For those of you who are not familiar with how a consent agenda works, it's generally a gathering together of more than one item for expediency, and they're items generally regarded by me and the staff as fairly routine. However, any council member, if they have a question on one of the consent agenda items, they can certainly ask it. If we can answer that question fairly quickly, we certainly will, or they have the option of pulling one of the items, and it'll be dropped down for individual consideration with the rest of the agenda. So at this time, I would ask council members on items 4 through 7 in the consent agenda, are there any questions or requests to pull any of these items?
I have one quick question, sir.
Okay.
Just for the city administrator, the numbers on item number 5, are they consistent with what was in the report from the previous meeting?
These are new. If you're asking whether they're similar budget adjustments, no. These are brand-new budget adjustments that were done since September 13th.
They're all new then?
They're all brand new.
Yeah, so what he's asking for through this is just a ratification of those.
Yep. Thank you.
Anything else? Cynthia, anything? Okay,
No.
then I would look for a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 4 through 7.
Mayor, I'd move we approve consent items 4 through 7.
We have a motion from Meadows. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Blue. So with no further discussion being necessary, we'll call the questions. All in favor of approving consent agenda items 4 through 7, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. This brings us to item number 8, which is the Texas Municipal Retirement Systems update of the service credits. And I don't know if you guys read the email from, I believe it was Kenneth Oliver at TMRS, but I read it, and it made me just think that we needed to just cover that one more time, so Rick says he'll do that. What we'll do is call for a motion and a second to discuss and take action on an ordinance authorizing the updated service credits, and then we'll let Rick explain and answer any questions. So if we can have a motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we discuss and take action on item number 8 as written.
We have a motion from Massey. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Buys. We'll go ahead and let Rick just review and cover what was in this email about what happens if this service credit update that we're proposing in this budget, what happens if council does it again within a certain time frame, making it permanent every year. So Rick, would you just review real quickly?
Yes, Mayor. Before I do that, let me go through the ordinance. What this ordinance does is keep everything exactly the same, but do an updated service credit at 100% on an ad hoc basis for this next calendar year in 2019. When we received the ordinance from TMRS, and they have a particular way that they want ordinances done, they also forwarded the email that the mayor is referring to. And so essentially what he's stating is that if the city of Helotes does an updated service credit at 100%, currently under their system, if we did it more than once in a 5-year period, it would have a material impact on our financial statements, meaning that the unfunded actuarial liabilities would increase considerably more than they would if you do it every 5 years. The reason for that is through their policy, if you do it more than once in a 5-year period, they assume that the updated service credits are automatic from the very beginning, meaning annual, because they are remember, they're actuarialists, so they are trying to bet that the city, if they do it 2 times in a 5-year period, or once in a 5-year period, and then they do it a second time, that they'll continue to do it within that 5-year period. So if you do it once, that's fine, but the second year you do it, they will assume that it's going to be on a repeated basis. And so that will impact the rate that TMRS will charge the city going forward. Now, it's certainly the prerogative of council to do whatever council wishes to do in the future, but we felt it was important to put this in there because I did not realize that there was an automatic assumption that if you do it twice in a 5-year period, that even if it's on an ad hoc basis, that they will just immediately implement an automatic updated service program.
Yeah, because that was a new bit of information that I don't remember us covering, like you said, and it says it will seriously impact future financial considerations by the city, so, but we don't have any numbers on that, so if council within 5 years decides to do this again?
I have, no, they're not, no, I do not have any numbers on that.
Okay, and I just noticed, and I don't have an ordinance in my notebook. Do any of the rest of you have an ordinance in your notebook?
The ordinance
I don't
is,
have one.
the ordinance is on page,
The backside.
the second page on the back.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
It didn't have the form of our regular ordinance, so this, I saw this.
That is the ordinance that they
That's
request
the
that
one
we
that they
use.
suggested, or they wrote,
That is the one that they require.
they require? Okay. Okay, with that being said, you have a question? Go ahead.
So the reason that they brought this up is because it's been 4 years since our last time we did this?
No,
No,
it's been
5 years.
It's
It
been
has
longer.
been 5 years.
Yeah.
Yes, at least 5 years. What they're just giving you they're giving you a cautionary statement there that if the city wants to do additional ad hoc updated service credits in the future, within the 5-year period of y'all adopting this tonight, that it would impact our rate that we have to contribute to TMRS significantly, and it would affect the unfunded actuarial liability that we have to pay. So doing this tonight does not affect anything, other than we would pay a few $1,000s extra in our annual contributions to TMRS, the city,
For this one?
for this one. But if you do anything in the future, there would be considerable effects on not only the contribution rate, but also our financial statements that have to recognize future liabilities associated with its retirement system.
So basically, we just need to keep this on a yearly basis, understanding this. I mean, we have to know this, and every year it comes up, this needs to be mentioned.
Yes. Well, I mean, what he's saying is if you don't want it to they're not going to tell you not to do an updated service credit. What they're just doing is saying, if you do it more than once every 5 years, there will be ramifications in additional liabilities and additional funds that the city will have to provide TMRS to cover its retirement system. So in a sense, they're kind of telling you to do it once every 5 years, but not really.
Cynthia, if I can horn in on your question, can you pass a resolution in, let's say, year 3 that says we're going to do a catch-up, but we're specifically excluding the fact, or specifically including the fact that this is not to be construed as an annual?
No.
You can't do
They will
it.
automatically assume that it is an annual,
So all we can do is once every 5 years then?
well, no.
Without impacting the amount of money they're going to assume is charged.
That is what I'm taking from this conversation with the TML, or the TMRS official, yes.
And I would like to just toss in, and if the thought just occurred to me, correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but this doesn't take effect until January 1, and this is not required to be passed tonight or approved tonight as part of the budget. We could maybe request some numbers for them in case a council does choose to do it again within 5 years, and how it would impact the future financial statements. Is that,
The only,
A thought?
you certainly can do that. The only impact it would have on the budget is that the budget is assuming the rate associated with this updated service credit.
but it wouldn't take effect until January 1 anyway?
No, that is correct, but the budget that y'all will adopt tonight has those dollars in it. So, in a sense, we would have some extra money in our
Correct.
budget.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'm a little out of order, I think.
Let me just make sure, were you done?
No, I do have another
Let her
question.
finish, and then we'll go in order.
So why, I don't understand, if we don't do this, and we all agreed that we wanted to do this, to give these extra service credits, what is their suggestion for it not to, is there something else that we can do? There's no suggestion of another way of handling this.
Well, there isn't anything else you can do through the TMRS system if you want to do updated service
So I
credits.
don't understand why there's a problem with this. We just don't do it again
It-
for 5
it-
years.
It's not a problem, it's just, yes, exactly. Just knowing, going in, that if it happens again within 5 years, it'll kind of change the picture moving
Right.
forward.
Okay, that's all.
Okay,
May I
Jim?
take minor
I
umbrage to them
second it, sir.
implying
Oh, you did?
Nathaniel?
Okay. Yeah, Bert seconded it, he just reminded me, so, Bert, you're up.
My question is, I'm understanding this part about the service credits, but when can we bring up the employee contribution rate again?
You can
Well, I know we can go up 1 more %. I still think we should have done that, but we voted not to. But when can we bring it up again?
Can bring it up.
Does this also control that?
No, this is only referring to updated service credits, because updated service credits automatically look every year at a person's salary. And as you all know, typically, people's salaries increase every year. So it affects the amount of retirement money, and I'm dumbing this down.
Oh, by all means.
It's constantly on an annual basis saying that the pot of money that you have to have in your retirement system has to grow at a faster rate to catch up with people's salaries.
Okay. Okay, but I'm getting back to my question. Though. In order to bring this up again about the employee contribution percentage,
This doesn't-
is it going to take 2 council members to make an agenda item, or we bring it up next year in budget, or how does that work?
Okay, this is for only calendar year 2019.
Okay.
So during the next budget process, if council wanted to increase the employee contribution rate, then you could do so at that time.
Okay, but how would I do, I mean, would it take an agenda item?
Yes.
By 2? Okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
No,
Okay,
I'm answering.
okay. All right, that's the part I wanted to answer.
Or it would be part of the budget discussion for next year, whichever you.
Okay.
Yeah, but
That's all I had.
that's not related to that email. That
Yeah,
email
yes,
is only
sir.
referring to updated
Okay,
service.
thank you. I'm done.
Jim?
Nothing really new. It bugs me, I guess, a little bit that they can automatically just assume that we're going to do something that we're not assuming.
Yeah.
We ought to have the right to do that within our own, and I know we have the right, it just is not a monetary impact, but if we do another action, then our budget will have to be increased because they'll assume that we're going to do it annually. Is that correct
Yes.
reading?
If you,
If we took a
Yes.
second action, they're going to assume that we're going to do it every year for the next 5 years.
yes.
Okay.
And beyond.
Yeah, and beyond. I don't like that, but I understand it.
Yeah, I don't either. Like it. Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think it's basically the rules that they've made, but we're
Yeah.
playing in their game.
Yeah.
So they get to make the rules if we want to participate or not. You had asked the question about whether or not we could get numbers. I believe we probably already have the numbers from the previous ones, because you may recall that a number of the different things we had before included the idea of doing a one-time service credit or
Yes.
doing a continuous service credit.
Yes.
And what they're basically saying is that if you do this on a single vote multiple times, you've essentially put them in the position of that continuous one.
Right.
And that's probably the numbers we're dealing with. And the reason we didn't go that route, even though we did talk about it, is because, yes, it's very expensive. It probably drops our unfunded liability probably about 10% in that number, and it was probably one of those numbers that was way up there. But we probably already have those numbers. We can look at that and the way it was on the continuous updated service credit, and that's probably what we could reasonably expect it to be without doing that. I think clearly this is the right thing to do at this point, and then we can make a decision. If things look so different in a year or two that we think we could go to that continuous, then we always have to make that decision then. So, that's fine, thank you.
Okay. Cynthia, anything else?
No.
Bert, anything else?
No, sir.
Jim?
No, sir.
Alex, okay. That being said, we'll call the question. And the vote here, a yes or aye vote, would be to approve the ordinance authorizing and allowing the updated service credit for this one time. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Item number 9, discussion of an action on an ordinance accepting approximately 2/10 mile of roadway from Texas Highway Department, or Texas Department of Transportation. So I would entertain a motion and a second to discuss and take action on item number 9.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we discuss and take action on item number 9 is written.
Have a motion from Massey. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Meadows. Hopefully what we included was helpful to you guys, and you should have another picture. Did we email that out? That's what
Yes,
we did, right?
yes, Mayor, I
Okay.
emailed it.
And hopefully that helped a little bit too. But Cynthia, it's your motion, so dive in.
Okay, so I just wanted to be clear on the new cutaway over on this other side, that's the new 1560.
Yeah.
And they want to name from Riggs Road coming here to Municipal, the Old Farm Road, 1560.
Yes, from the
Okay.
right-of-way at that point, all the way to Municipal Complex, that section is being dedicated to the city.
Right, and so the suggestion is to name that Old Farm Road 1560.
That was just something that they tossed out, kind of like Old Bandera Road was named when the new
And if
Bandera.
that- I have no problem with that. The section that I had mentioned to you guys, or to just look into was the little area that used to be Circle A that's now, because Circle A is now on the other side and it's closed. You can't even go in, I mean, it's been cut in half and that's it. So I was thinking that little, and there's no address there, right? I mean, there's no business or anything. It's just a little strip. And since that's another a way to get into the municipal complex, I thought it would be nice to call it either City Hall Way or Municipal Complex Way. It's just such a small little area, and I think it will help. And then I think I mentioned something about the other sign that's before the new 1560. And then I noticed, I turned to the right from there and saw that there is a sign that points this way. So, okay, I didn't see that before. When you're just going straight down Bandera Road and you don't turn, it's a little confusing. But when you turn, you see that there's actually 2 ways to get now to City Hall. But anyway, I just thought since it's such a small little area, such a small road, it would be silly to call it Circle A Trail. It's not Circle A Trail anymore. It's not connected anymore to Helotes Park Estates. So, like I said, my suggestion is to name that one Municipal Complex Way or City Hall Way. And I was trying, since everything else is called Municipal Complex, I figured Municipal Complex Way would be a nice thing to.
There's no addresses on that? little
There's
strip?
no addresses.
Yeah, for you, keep in mind that was never a city street, and it was always TxDOT, and people just called it Circle A Trail. It wasn't officially named Circle A Trail. It just became known as a landmark, Circle A Trail. That's why we put that in here, just because people commonly for years have referred to it as Circle A Trail. But it's totally up to you guys. You could name it Hopalong Cassidy Way for whatever you want to do, but the only thing I see is Municipal Complex Way. We might have to get an extra long street sign. But I'm kidding. Jim, you're second.
Aside from having that an extra long street sign, I kind of like the name. So, the Municipal Complex Way, just because it does relate to what we have. But other than that, I have no other
Okay.
comments.
Yeah, Public Works is right there. You could name it Public Works Way too, so. Alex?
Actually, Public Works is, I think, a little further down, so they may not.
Oh, it's right there. It dead ends into it.
That's right, it does go straight into the front end, so. But, no, I don't have any reference or preference one way or the other with regard to that. I think that it's fine to, sometimes if you call it something different, then eventually those maps that'll be on everybody's phone will probably be confusing, and somebody will think they can cross over, so changing the name might be the right thing to do long-term, so I have no problem with that at all. It's only, about 30, 40 feet long anyhow?
Probably 50
Just
maybe.
municipal way instead of municipal complex way.
That would be good.
That would work, too. I'm fine. That works. We would eventually need to probably designate a stop sign at that location, and,
TxDOT,
to-
we've already talked to them about street signs and.
no,
and
but we'd have to get it in the ordinance, so we'd have to get the name
There,
down.
there's
before we
already a
can do
stop
it.
sign there,
The stop signs are included in the ordinance.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anything else?
Do we need to amend our,
Well, let's hear Bert's comments, and then we'll get to that.
Okay. Well, first of all, about that, the little piece of road that you're talking about, if you Google that area, it says Circle A, and I think it should stay Circle A in my mind. Also, I want to applaud, I guess it was Jonathan that came up with the suggestion of old FM 1560.
Well, you said that's what typically cities do
Well,
in a case like
that's
this.
going to help our businesses over there on that piece of road, and they're not going to have to change everything, all their Google addresses, their headings and all that other stuff. That's good for our businesses that are already there, because they're going to have some issues because there's no more traffic going through there, except for people coming to their businesses, and, and they're not having the volume of people go by. The other thing that popped in my head, I remember going to some meetings with the mayor and city administrator. Tex, I know we've got this roadway, they're giving it to us supposedly in perpetuity, or whatever that word is, yeah. Okay, I remember in one of the meetings that they said we had to continue doing something, or they would have to take it back. Do you remember what they said? I could
Yeah.
not, for the life of me, remember.
Yes, if the
We
ci-
have to do something, right?
No. If the city ever decides to sell this property to a private developer.
That's what it was, okay, yeah.
And move the municipal complex somewhere else, then that street segment would revert back to TxDOT, because,
So we don't have
the
it
way
in
it works.
perpetuity. It's not, but it's not mentioned in any of the paperwork that I read that could happen if we did sell the complex.
it may be in the transportation code, but they say, it's in there somewhere, that if a city in a situation like this would sell this property, then that would revert back to TxDOT.
Well, I just wanted to kind of let council know that really, if we did have to move, go to a bigger area or whatever, that we could, TxDOT could take that roadway back. So, just for your info.
Can I
And just
clarify?
for clarity, there is a distinction now between old FM 1560 and FM 1560. So the businesses will still need to probably do some
Well,
adjustment on their
They're
stuff.
going to have to, not like if you change the
But-
name completely, like we were talking about over
We
there at
tried to
business.
keep it as simple as
Right.
possible as we could to make it as painless as we could. Rick, you had something?
Yes, my recollection on that conversation is somewhat different. It's not, what I understood and what I understand from in here is that if the municipal complex can sell, the issue is that property, since it's a public right-of-way, can never change from being a public right-of-way. So if it was ever changed into an actual development, or it was incorporated and that street was to go away, then TxDOT would come in and take that back as right-of-way. But we can sell the municipal complex if we wanted to, as long as it stays as a street. The city has the authority right now, once if that was on any street really, to go in and take the street away. So that's what TxDOT is saying. If you take the street away, it reverts back to the state because it was bought with federal monies for right-of-way purposes.
Yeah, that's basically what I was saying, and you did not attend the meeting that Bert and I attended where that was brought up specifically. And regardless of how it's put, TxDOT, if this complex is sold to a private developer, they can reclaim that street. And I'd have to look at the fine print, whether it's still a public right-of-way or whatever, but as a city, I don't think the city could sell that street anyway. They could just sell this property. But anyway, that's fine print, and
Well, I mean-
I doubt it'll ever happen unless some
Well,
future
probably not in
council
our
sells
life.
this property. But we'll let them deal with it down the road.
Okay. That's all I had.
Cynthia, any follow-up?
Yeah, no, I think maybe changing it instead of saying municipal complex, we're just saying municipal way. I live off of Circle A Trail, so it means something to me to, tell somebody, come to my house, I live off of Circle A, and there's this little segment over here, and you say you can get it on Google. Well, eventually Google will get the new street on there too. So I'm not worried about what Google says, but I just think it's silly to have this little section called Circle A Trail when it really isn't anymore, especially in light of the new barricade that you can't get across the street, So I think Municipal Way is a nice way to designate that street.
So you would be amending your original motion? Actually, you just brought it up as part of the motion, I guess, but your intent with this motion is to take that small segment and instead of naming it Circle A Trail, to name it Municipal Way?
Yes.
Okay. Jim, your second?
And I would accept that second. Google may find it, but I guarantee Siri's not going to find it for 10 years, and they'd be putting people
saying.
across the street.
Yeah.
And I like the name change in that respect.
Well, I don't know about
Alex?
I'm not using Siri anyway. Municipal Way is fine by me, and the rest is fine too.
Bert?
No comment.
Is that a first?
Probably.
No. So no more discussion. So the motion is to name the longer segment Old FM 1560 and to name that small segment, instead of Circle A Trail, name it Municipal Way. Okay, we'll call the question then. An aye vote is to approve the dedication of that particular property or street to the city and make it a city street, and thus naming the segment Old FM 1560 and the short one Municipal Way. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. That takes us on to number 10, discussion of an action on an ordinance amending Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 86-16, stop signs by adding a stop sign location at the intersection of Mesquite Flat and Stagecoach. So if we can have a motion in a second to discuss this exciting item.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. I make a motion we discuss and take action on 10, please.
We have a motion from Buys. We have a second,
I'll second that.
and a second from Blue. So Bert, it's your motion. You're up.
Where'd this come from?
Rick?
Okay, is there some reason why we, after over 40 years, need a stop sign at this intersection?
That is precisely the question I asked.
I
and
mean,
he had a
I'm
very-
sorry,
he had a very
I
good
don't mean to be
response.
rude. I didn't mean to come across like that, but I just
At
don't
that-
understand
At
it.
that location, there is neither a yield sign nor a stop sign. There's nothing to regulate traffic, and there should be.
Okay. I disagree with that unless there's some kind of law that says we have to do it. We haven't had, that's down the street from where I live. I don't even go through that intersection. There is minimal traffic on that road. I don't understand why we would need a stop sign there. Maybe a yield sign. I remember at the new Municipal Way and 1560, which is old 1560 now, we had a yield sign there for years and years and years, and maybe years and years, okay? And there was more traffic going through there than there, in one day, than there was probably in 2 years on that street. I just don't understand why we need anything there.
Well, I will say that the rules of the road do dictate that at an intersection, the through
Okay, well
street,
then, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
the through street is a through street, and the perpendicular or intersecting street is a stop street, unless there is a yield sign. So,
So. we're
And it's
saying-
the old adage, just because it's been that way for so long doesn't mean it
Can
was right.
we, okay, if we're going to have to put something there, can we consider a yield sign? Would that handle the situation?
Councilman, I honestly don't care. I just want something there because it doesn't make any sense to have have an intersecting street on a through street without regulating traffic on that
Even though it's been like that for
It's not
probably,
If
Through
there-
street
if-
going all the way across?
Stagecoaches.
It doesn't go all the way across Mesquite Flat.
And it's not like that perpendicular, it's more of a
more of a
circular.
rounded.
It's a round, and you can see both ways real well, and there's not.
I just listened to Rick and Public Works, and I understand their concern. I did not talk to PD, but I would assume if there was a wreck and there's not a sign there, then it would be hard designating who was at fault. To me, the intersecting street technically should stop or yield, and this is just a sign to make that official.
Okay, it sounds like
But I'm-
we're gonna put something there anyway. Can we please
I'm in agreement
consider?
with you. It's been there this long and nothing's happened, and I questioned it, but I don't argue with traffic code if that applies.
Can we please consider putting a yield sign there? That's all I've got to say.
Alex is second, so Alex, you're up.
My first question was what was prompting it as well, and if there hasn't been a particular issue other than just a need to regulate, then I would concur that a yield sign would probably be appropriate, because that also solves the issue of who yields to the other, and not necessary to put up a stop sign for the residents who live there, just because you know it's going to be nothing but an inconvenience when there's hardly any traffic there. So I would recommend changing that from a stop sign to a yield sign.
Unless there's something in the traffic code that would preclude that, I guess, might be a good consideration.
That's my question, is that if there's something in the traffic code that says at a T intersection, it must be a stop sign? Rick, was that what you were trying to say earlier?
Councilman, if you look at Stagecoach here, zoom in, please.
Yeah, it's a weird intersection.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a clear intersection. So, to me, it warrants a stop sign. And I know I disagree with Councilman Buys on that, but the way that it looks, it's a very clear intersection where it should have a stop sign on Mesquite Flat, in my opinion. I think a yield sign, however, to Councilman Buys' point, would be better than nothing. And I think that at the very least would be appropriate at that intersection.
My question was, I thought I heard you say earlier that there was something in the Texas code that said at that type of intersection that there needed to be a stop sign unless you decided to put in a yield sign, that something needed to be there. Did I mishear that, or?
My recollection is that, again, if it's a through street and you have an intersecting street on that through street, the intersecting street is a stop location.
That's what I was,
However, I do not know, I would be lying if I said I did, whether a city can put a yield sign in lieu of that, and that would take care of the rules of the road.
I have no objection to a yield sign. I just wonder about if we do something that's contrary to code, are we introducing two lawyers arguing with each other over
Certainly.
who is supposed to be stopping?
Well, just to toss in another thought, and that's the reason this is on the agenda. I didn't want to tell Rick yes or no without input, because traffic signs do come under the purview of the council. This is, since this has been there for probably 40-plus years, we can do a little more research to be sure, rather than guess and put a lot of contingencies in the motion. And so one of your possible actions would be to postpone it to a later date and let Rick and Josh do a little more studying of the traffic code and see if a yield sign would work or if a stop sign would be the absolute one possibility. And again, there's always the way of looking the other way and not doing anything. But if the traffic code is fairly specific and says at an intersection you should have some signage of some kind, whether a stop or yield, then we would need to address that. Cynthia,
I agree
with what?
with what, everything you just said.
Postponing.
I think we should postpone it until we find out for sure.
Okay.
If it's necessary, if it's legal that we have to have one, then we have to have one.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not. So there you go.
I pretty well saw this discussion coming, and so I'm glad we had it. And Bert, so it would be your option, since it's your motion, your first option, or your option first, whether or not you would like to postpone this to our next meeting and let Rick and Josh do a little more investigation on it and see precisely what, if anything, is necessary.
That's a no-brainer. We'll postpone it. I wish we would've had some input on that sign that was put up there, pick up your poop after your animals, there on Stagecoach Lane also. I don't know why that was put there, but anyway.
They're looking for a place to put signs.
Sign, let's put up some more. Anyway, yes, sir, I would amend my motion to make it
There's a picture of a
postpone.
dog there, but it was mainly put up, as I recall, for the people that ride horses, and the horses make
Makes
pretty
my grass
sizable
greener.
deposit.
Anyway. No,
just-
I'll amend my motion.
Just to clarify, those are actually because of our MS4 requirements.
Yes,
For our municipal
Glad you
storm
said
sewer
that.
system. They're required by federal law.
yes,
Oh, my God.
for us to keep our MS4 permit.
Can you say Pandora's box?
More
Yes.
bureaucracy, that's what we need. Anyway,
When in doubt, refer to the federal government regulations.
yes, sir. Did you get it?
Yes,
amending to postpone.
to postpone to our next meeting, and what's that date, Selena?
Jim? 10th, isn't it?
That's what I'm thinking.
October 11th.
October 11th? Okay, so we're have a motion to postpone. Alex, do you concur and second that motion to postpone? Any discussion on a postponement? Okay, well, we will bring this back to you with everything you need to make a decision.
So it will require somebody who's been here as a septuagenarian to understand that it's been 40 years plus, that it's always been done that way, or?
40 years plus? Yes, you're correct. Okay, so the motion is, with a second, to postpone this item to our meeting of October 11th. So no further discussion. We'll call the question to approve the amended motion to postpone to October 11th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries, and we have postponed this. It will come back as old business on the next agenda. Okay. Moving on to number 11, discussion of and action on an ordinance making appropriations for the support of the city of Helotes for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2018 and ending September 30th, 2019. And this is basically approving the budget that has been presented to you. So we'll look at a motion and a second to discuss and take action on accepting the 2018-19 budget.
Mr. Mayor, I so move. Sorry.
You made the motion? Motion from Meadows. Do we have a second?
I'll say.
And a motion from Meadows, a second from By. So Jim, it's your motion, so you're first up on discussion, and you should have the updated numbers that show a little bit more revenue and the appropriate adjustments in the expense side of the budget, but do you have any other questions or comments?
You took my question, sir. For the city administrator, just double checking that these numbers are reflective only of the changes because the last month's revenue's coming in. There are
Yes.
no other changes to the items.
There are no other substantive changes.
That's what I meant.
I mean, everything is still basically
Right.
where it was before, yes, sir.
Okay. That's my only question.
He's just making adjustments, and then remember that the money spent in the first 30 days or so of the next fiscal year will be, well, what do we call that?
Charged back.
Charged back to this fiscal year. So that's it?
That's it.
Bert?
I have really no questions about the budget, but I'd just like to thank the mayor and the city administrator and assistant city administrator for all the hard work you did on our budget. It's good work, and thank you very much. It's another a job well done.
Thanks. It's mostly those two.
Thanks. I'm surprised you're thanking me after my comments about the stop and yield sign.
I told you I
He's
wasn't
already-
going to be rude.
He's already forgotten that and moved on. Okay, Cynthia, any questions
So-
or comments on the budget?
So our budget, just to be clear, we're working on the total revenues, and this is gonna be a balanced budget.
7.7, something?
What pages, I found it a minute ago, here it is.
It's on the second page.
7 adopted budget, 7,732,213. So this is the budget we're working with.
Yes.
Okay.
Keep in mind that is an estimate, but Rick likes to get it down to the nearest dollar. Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've gone through this quite a bit, and I'm satisfied.
Okay. Bert, anything, or Jim, anything else?
No, sir.
Bert, okay. No further discussion required, then a yes vote adopts the budget as has been presented to you guys. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The 2018-2019 budget is hereby approved. And I believe we stated earlier, this is the largest budget in our city's history as far as revenue goes and the corresponding expenditures. So it's a true sign that we are in fact growing in many different ways. Discussion of and action on ordinance is number 12, ratifying the adoption of the fiscal year 2018-2019 municipal budgets, raising more revenue from ad valorem property taxes due to increased property valuations and the addition of real property to the tax rolls. So if we have a motion and a second to discuss and take action on this ordinance.
I make a motion to discuss, take action on 12.
I have a motion from Buys. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Blue. And again, this is just saying that we are in fact raising more revenue because of the increase in property valuations and the addition of new real properties on the tax roll from the previous year. So Bert, any comments or questions on this?
Is this something the feds make us do? I think we talked about this before, right?
Yeah, the state, yeah.
I mean, the state, yeah.
Yeah,
No, I don't have any other questions.
okay. Alex?
I have no comments.
Jim?
Done.
Cynthia?
I'm fine with it.
Okay, we'll call the question. All in favor of approving the ordinance, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. This moves us on to item 13, and you have a printout here. And I would like to say that according to the state, the motion in this item is very strict on what the motion says or must say, and that's on the first sheet. So whichever one of you is going to make the motion, we would appreciate it if you would read the motion verbatim the way it is on that cover sheet, and then we will discuss in a little more detail after that. So whoever wants to make the motion, please make it as it is written on that sheet.
Mayor, may I ask a question about the memo before we make the
Sure.
motion? If it requires a 4 out of 5, and since we have one absent, does that mean it requires unanimous
Yes.
action?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I would move then that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of .35 per $100 valuation, which is effectively a 0.18% increase in the tax rate.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Meadows and a second from Buys. So, Jim, do you have any comments or questions on this other than your motion?
No, sir?
Okay. Bert, anything from you?
No.
Alex?
Mr. Mayor, I'm proud that for this year, like many of the last ones, that we've been able to keep the tax rate flat and yet still show growth and improvement within the city and the budget. And I think it's a testament to really a great deal of our staff in making do with what we have. And I think it reflects well on your leadership as well, that the tax rate during your tenure as mayor originally was going down, but then really has stayed flat, and yet there's still a lot that goes on with this city that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Cynthia?
I just would like to also reiterate that we've had the 35 cent tax rate for the last, 5 or 6 years? I mean, for a long time. So it seems a little misleading, but it says that the tax rate because of the new properties, it's going up, but it's, the tax rate is, but our tax rate isn't. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain. One of the things it says here is that it will raise taxes for maintenance and operations on a $100,000 home by approximately $5.66, which is very nominal. And again, it's the same tax rate we've had for the last 5 years, so there you go.
Okay, well, as every year, I like to comment on this particular item because I don't agree with what the legislature requires us to say or read. The motion in itself is very confusing to a lot of people, and to me, it's just blatantly untrue, because and they can toss in the word effectively in there to cover themselves, but we did not in fact have a 0.18% increase in the tax rate. The tax rate stayed the same. In reading the revenue manual from Texas Municipal League, there are about 1,200 cities in the state of Texas that are incorporated municipalities. A city, once incorporated, has the prerogative of passing a property tax rate, commonly referred to as an ad valorem rate. And of the 1,200, about 1,064 actually have a property tax rate. And with our population and our type of city, which is a type A general law, we can actually, as a city, as any general law city of our size, could actually be up to a maximum of $2.50 per hundred. Very few go over 75 cents to $1 from all I've seen. In Texas, property tax for those cities that adopt a property tax rate is the single largest revenue source that goes into the general fund and allows the city to operate. Typically in a Texas city, as of the last reporting earlier this year, the average property tax percentage of general fund revenue is about 35%. Sales tax is the second largest revenue source, and it averages throughout the state at around 28%. Typically, they say a well-run city or a healthy city from an economic standpoint runs about 30% for both, and equal to a total 60%. And then the other 40% of the revenue comes from other things such as building permit fees, franchise fees, you name it. There are a lot of different sources of revenue. The reason that we as cities, whether it's a small city like Helotes or a large city like Houston, Dallas, or San Antonio, is allowed to generate revenues on their own is because the state of Texas gives no financial assistance to municipalities. It ranks down in the close to 50th as far as states, when it comes to financial assistance to municipalities. So to offset that, they allow cities to raise revenues in various ways, such as the property tax, sales tax, and all of the other things. When you look at what's going on with this and why they make us say these things, it just really irritates me, because as Cynthia brought up on the ordinance, it says this tax rate will raise more taxes for maintenance and operations than last year's tax rate. And I disagree with that. It's going to bring in more tax revenue, but the true way it should state, in my mind, in my opinion, is it will raise more revenue. The reason it's raising more revenue is, as we said earlier, property values have gone up, as they do every year, and that's based upon the assessments that are done by the Bexar County Appraisal District, or in any county's appraisal district. It says here the tax rate will effectively be raised, which to me is again misleading, because we did not raise our tax rate. It says it will be raised by 2.43% and will raise taxes, again, that is a misstatement, for maintenance and operations on a $100,000 home by approximately $5.66. And again, that is only because of the generally 10% increase in the assessed value of each property within Bear County. And the trend is always to go that maximum 10% allowed by the state. We as property owners have a choice of going to the appraisal district and protesting that amount. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Lately, it doesn't really do much, but at least they give us that opportunity. So again, when they're talking about the different tax rates, that to me is also confusing for the typical taxpayer and citizen. The legislature calls the effective tax rate the basis for truth in taxation in Texas, when in fact the effective tax rate is nothing more than a hypothetical number that says that tax rate will allow a city to generate or take in the same amount of revenue on property taxes as it did the previous year. And so they really want you to stay at that effective tax rate. Then you have a proposed tax rate, which we've had until tonight, at the 35 cents in this case, and then once it's approved, it actually becomes the nominal tax rate, which is what it is after tonight. The thing that astounds me about the legislature in requiring this effective tax rate and the way that these things have to be read according to law is, to me, it makes the assumption that a city cannot raise additional revenue on property taxes without having to go through a bunch of hoops and worry about rollback rates and that type of thing. And the thing that bothers me the most about that is the assumption, I take it, that the legislature thinks that inflation does not impact cities like it does anyone else in the country. A city is subject to inflation just like anybody else, whether it's a private company or whatever. It costs us more just in general things that we do to operate the city on a day-to-day basis. And that is why it's ludicrous to me to make the assumption that cities should not be able to raise more revenue based on property tax. As Councilmember Blue mentioned earlier, there was a time when we went 3 years in a row and dropped the tax rate, and then it steadied out at 35 cents, and we've done a lot of things and still been able to keep that tax rate. As Councilmember Massey said, it should be this should be our 5th year, as I recall. And we've incurred some debt. We were very careful on incurring that debt, and that was for the water and sewer line, the bridge on 1560, the realignment project out here, and some other projects. We took on an additional $4.4 million in long-term debt to help pay for or fund those projects, and we did that only after really looking at this and seeing that it would not impact our INS, or our debt service fund. And as Councilmember Blue says, we can all be very proud of that because we are diligent. And it really chaps me when I read that some legislators in Austin say that they need to have more control over municipalities because municipalities, the elected officials of municipalities, aren't smart enough to handle their own finances, so the state thinks that they should put their hands in our pockets and place caps on our ability to raise revenue to run our cities the way they need to be run to assure the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. So that being said, that's a long oratory on this, but every year it just really bothers me when we're forced to say things that just aren't true. So again, to keep it clear, our tax rate, our property tax rate, our ad valorem tax rate stayed exactly the same, regardless of what this ordinance says and regardless of what we're required to say. We stayed exactly the same. We are raising a little more revenue, but as we said, it's because there's more property value and new properties are being built. So I will stop with that until next year, and hopefully if I'm still here, I will go through the same little speech, because dadgummit, I think this is far from truth in taxation, and I really am going to be talking to some of our legislators as we have in the past and say, hey, you guys need to clean this up because it's very confusing. Looking at all these multiple tax rates, the average citizen, the average taxpayer has no clue what's going on except that their amount they're paying to taxes goes up every year because of those valuations. Okay. So we have a motion and a second.
We do.
Did we? Okay.
It's been so long. you
I'm
forgot.
excited.
Did we?
I'm excited.
Is this the roll call vote?
Yeah.
This is the roll call vote.
Yes, it's a roll call vote. And we have it broken into two, but just, we have the M and O tax amount, and we have the INS tax amount, but both of them equal the 35 cents. So what you're doing with this ordinance is approving the 35 cents, and then that takes care of the other two. And did everybody get a chance to talk? Did anyone else want to follow up on that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. Good luck talking to the reps and senators up
Yeah, well,
Anyway.
you never know till you ask.
Yep.
Okay, and so we will start with place one. Jim, a yes vote will approve this 35 cent per hundred tax
Yes.
rate. Yes? Alex?
Yes.
Bert?
Yes.
Cynthia?
Yes.
Okay, the record vote shows the 4 council members present. Each voted yes, and it will be recorded as that.
Mayor, I need to take a 1-minute recess.
On a 1 minute?
1 minute?
Man. Okay, let's make it 5. No objection to a 5-minute recess?
No, sir.
Okay, we're back from recess at 10 after 8, so I guess that's a minute early, which is good. Shows we're conserving time. That takes us to our last item on our agenda, which is item 14, approval of a resolution approving appropriations for the City of Helotes Economic Development Corporation fiscal year ending 2019. And so I would look for a motion and a second to approve, discuss and approve this resolution.
Mayor, I make a motion that we discuss the approval of a resolution for the EDC.
I have a motion from Buys. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Massey. Okay, Bert, you're up.
Well, we've discussed it before, and I'm for the approval of the resolution.
Cynthia?
Yes, it's interesting. The revenues have gone up quite a bit since, in the last 4 years. It's doubled, it looks like at least.
Yeah, a lot of that's due to BMC West, and then you'll see payout of the grant funding down in their expenditure part. But yeah, you're right.
It's very good. Okay, yeah, I'm fine with approving this.
Okay, Jim, anything?
No.
Alex?
No, I'm fine, thank you, sir.
You're fine. Okay, no other discussion being required. We'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries. The resolution is approved for the appropriations for the EDC for the next fiscal year. By golly, that takes us to the end of our agenda. So if there are no objections from any council member, we will adjourn. Hearing no objections, we'll adjourn at 8:12.